I am a 31-year-old man, perfectly average, painfully responsible, and growing up sandwiched between two extremes. Caroline, 36, was the crown jewel of the family in the most frustrating way. She was dramatic, loud, unpredictable, and always one meltdown away from being comforted like a wounded princess. Mason, 28, was sunshine on legs, charming, easygoing, teacher's favorite, grandma's favorite, everyone's favorite. Meanwhile, I was the kid who remembered dentist appointments, balanced checking accounts, filled the gas tank before returning the car, and made sure the winter tires were changed before the first snowfall. If reliability was a personality, that was me. I was the one who shoveled the driveway at 6 in the morning while everyone else slept, the one who picked up the phone when someone needed help moving a couch, the one who drove my parents to doctor visits without being asked. I was needed often, appreciated rarely, noticed almost never. Caroline has two sons, Logan, who is 7, and River, who is 4. Good kids, funny, smart, but they orbit chaos the way planets orbit the sun. Their mother believes parenting is a performance, and she only performs when an audience is watching. She works as a hairstylist, but her real job is maintaining the spotlight. When things get hard, she calls mom and says she is overwhelmed. She cries, she trembles, she says she is just doing her best as a single mother, and suddenly plates are being washed for her, groceries appear in her trunk, babysitting schedules magically form around her convenience. Mason can do no wrong either. If Mason breathes, our parents praise him for being alive. I have always been the practical one, the dependable one, the backbone no one sees until it breaks. So when I received a text from Caroline last month that said she expected me to babysit on Saturday because she had a date, and because mom already knew, I actually stared at my phone for a full minute, trying to register how casually she assigned me unpaid labor. Not requested, assigned. Like she was notifying me about a dentist appointment I never scheduled. I told her I had plans of my own for once. I had put aside money for a quiet evening with myself, dinner at a place I could not usually justify, maybe a movie where no one needed anything from me. She responded with confidence that if anyone in the family should babysit, it should be me, because I was the responsible one. I texted back that responsibility does not automatically equal free childcare. She did not reply again, and I assumed she accepted the answer. She did not. Saturday morning proved that. I was eating breakfast when my mother called asking what time I was picking up the boys. I told her confidently that I was not. She sounded bewildered, as if the decision had been made without my consent, and I was simply forgetting my role in the script. She said Caroline already promised them I would help, and that Mason could. Not since he had plans with friends, which she said in a tone suggesting that Mason's time mattered. When I reminded her I also had plans, she sighed the way mothers sigh when they believe you are being unreasonable. Dad muttered in the background that I should think of family. It felt like guilt was a currency and they were trying to pay me with it. I held my boundary. I said no. I felt like the villain in a story someone else wrote. 2 hours later, there was frantic knocking and the unmistakable noise of small bodies running. I opened the door and saw Logan and River standing there alone with backpacks half open. No Caroline, no explanation. Just children delivered like Amazon packages. By the time I stuck my head out the door, her car was already disappearing down the street. Logan's zipper was stuck and River had a sticky handprint on his face. A wrinkled note taped to Logan's backpack said she would return by midnight and thanked me as if this was a favor I enthusiastically volunteered for. The boys had no spare clothes, no snacks, no plan. Nothing except energy and absolutely no supervision apart from me, a man who had been ambushed into a responsibility he declined. The chaos began quickly. In the first 12 minutes, Logan knocked over a lamp because he wanted to see if it could fall louder than River's laughter. River found joy in pouring cereal directly onto the carpet and then rubbing it in with his feet like he was seasoning meat. Logan locked himself in the bathroom, insisting proudly that he would live on the toilet forever, because kings deserved porcelain thrones. River tried flushing a toy car, and when it did not go down, he declared the toilet broken like he was simply reporting the weather. They ate everything in my fridge. Whole sticks of cheese, slices of bread layered like playing cards, handfuls of grapes crushed into the couch. All that was left was mustard and baking soda. I stood there thinking that if I had walked into this mess voluntarily, it would be my fault. But I had been volunteered, without consent, without preparation, without even a shred of respect. At a certain point, survival instincts kicked in. I realized the only way to make it through the day was containment. Children are like tornadoes. You cannot stop them, but you can try to direct the destruction somewhere padded. I drove them to the trampoline park. Admission for 2 children plus socks was $68. They jumped, they flipped, they screamed, they fell, they threw foam cubes. They were happy for 45 minutes. Then they were exhausted and hungry, and River said that pizza was the only food that could save his life. The arcade next door gleamed like Vegas to tiny eyes, so in we went. Another $42 because tokens disappear faster than sanity. Then dinner. They refused to share a pizza because brothers apparently become mortal enemies when mozzarella is involved, so I bought them individual pizzas. One kid wanted pepperoni. The other wanted plain, but then changed his mind and wanted pepperoni too, so both pizzas ended up swapping toppings until nothing made sense. Dinner was $63 and 3 glasses of lemonade spilled like ritual sacrifice across the table. By the time we got home, River had rubbed pizza grease into his hair until it shined like motor oil, so I bought shampoo on the way back. $18 more. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The toy car in the toilet grew pride and refused to move. Plunger failed. Snake failed. Toilet gurgled like it was summoning demons. I had to call a plumber because I rent, and if I break something, I pay for it. Emergency weekend plumbing is $647. I nearly choked when I signed that receipt. Logan stared at the plumber the entire time like the man was a magician performing forbidden spells. Add in the cost of the lamp they broke, which was $119, and I began to see numbers stacking like Tetris blocks in my mind. $2,000 was within reach, and something inside me clicked. A gear shifted. If I was being treated like unpaid labor, then I would start conducting myself like paid labor. So I did. I documented everything. Receipts, timestamps, itemized expenses, hospitality, child entertainment, damage repair, professional services. I typed it neatly, organized it clearly, printed it with a header listing hours of labor at a fair market babysitting rate. I even formatted it like an official business invoice because there is a special kind of satisfaction in making chaos look professional. Caroline arrived at 3 in the morning, giggling and swaying like responsibility was optional. She opened the door expecting gratitude. Instead, I handed her a folder. She flipped through the papers with confusion, then laughter, then disbelief. I told her calmly that just like she reminds clients at her salon, my time has value. I told her she dropped off 2 children without consent, without supplies, without payment, and expected me to abandon my own plans to manage them for nearly 20 hours. I told her I provided care, food, entertainment, damages coverage, and emergency plumbing. And then I told her the amount due, $2,004.73. She stared, speechless. The world rested still for a moment. Next morning, my mother called saying Caroline told her I was extorting her. She said I should be ashamed. She said family does not charge family. Dad quietly muttered that I did do the work, and somehow that single sentence felt like the first drop of rain after a long drought. Caroline demanded I waive the invoice. I responded that I would be happy to as soon as she reimbursed every haircut I ever paid her for, with tip, since apparently we were disregarding family discounts. And that was the end of it. No more arguments, no more demands, no more expectations that I would step in for free, because I was responsible. The silence was strange at first, peaceful eventually, and I will tell you this with full honesty, I have never felt so justified in my life. She hasn't asked me to babysit since. I thought that invoice was the end of it, a hard boundary drawn clean. I assumed Caroline would avoid me out of embarrassment or pride. Instead, she pivoted to something she excels at: public victimhood. 2 days after the babysitting incident, I woke up to screenshots from 3 different cousins. Caroline had posted a dramatic Facebook status saying certain family members were heartless and would rather charge their own flesh and blood than help out of love. She said some people weaponize money to punish single mothers, and that it is disgusting what greed does to family loyalty. The comments section was a glowing bonfire of sympathy. Caroline surrounded herself with people who only knew her highlight reel, so her curated tragedy spread like wildfire. Everyone was chiming in with "You deserve better," and real family supports each other and single mothers have it so hard. I stared at my phone, not angry, just tired. I could have commented with receipts. I could have explained she abandoned her kids on my doorstep for 20 hours without a sandwich crust or a spare shirt. I could have listed expenses like an auctioneer. Instead, I put the phone down. I figured silence speaks louder than defensive paragraphs no one wants to hear. 4 days later, she messaged me privately with a tone that could charitably be described as forced sweet. She asked if I would watch Logan and River on Saturday for just a few hours because she had a date she did not want to cancel. She said she would pay me after payday and hoped we could move past negativity because family should uplift each other. It took effort to not laugh. The same woman who crucified me online for charging money wanted my services again. But on credit, I replied that my babysitting rate is $25 per hour plus expenses. She read the message instantly and responded that I was arrogant. I wished her luck finding someone cheaper. She stopped typing. Saturday arrived, and instead of the usual sound of children pounding on my door like tiny law enforcement agents, there was silence. No car in the driveway, no surprise delivery, no crumpled note taped to a backpack. I went for a walk in peace, got coffee, watched a grown adult eat a croissant without wiping its face on furniture. That evening, Mason mentioned casually in our family group chat that Caroline canceled her date because she could not find a sitter. I imagined her scrolling through contacts like she was defusing a bomb, realizing the free labor market had collapsed. My parents responded with subtle disappointment disguised as concern. They said I was setting a precedent and that families should be able to depend on each other. I stared at that message longer than I should have. It stung because for years, dependability meant me sacrificing my time without compensation or complaint. Suddenly, charging for labor was a moral failing. I kept thinking about precedent, not mine, hers. Caroline had established for years that she could drop her kids anywhere, anytime, without notice or supplies or accountability. She expected unconditional yeses like they were inherited rights. I remembered birthdays spent babysitting, holidays spent cleaning up toy explosions, weekends spent rearranging plans because someone else had a date or a meltdown or a hair appointment emergency. I remembered the way gratitude never arrived. I remembered how exhaustion looked invisible on me but heroic on her. It was strange watching everyone panic over me enforcing a boundary instead of questioning why the boundary was necessary at all. What surprised me most was the quiet shift in dynamics. Friends at work heard the story and winced like I told them about stepping on a nail. One of them asked if I was always the designated responsible one and then said that responsibility does not mean servitude. That sentence lingered like a bell ringing after sound stops. My therapist, who I finally booked with the money I saved not babysitting, asked if I recognized how much emotional labor I carried for my family. I did not know how to answer. Caroline continued posting vague statuses. Indirect jabs like real love costs nothing, and fake generosity always comes with a bill. She shared memes about toxic relatives and found high engagement from people who knew nothing about the plumbing bill. I still ignored her, not out of pettiness, out of self-preservation. Engaging would pull me back into the same loop where I explain, they minimize, and the cycle resets like a washing machine. It was freeing to not volunteer my sanity as a peace offering. A week later, Mom called again with a gentle scold tucked behind concern. She said she hoped resentment would not tear the family apart. She said Caroline was struggling. She said Logan cried when he could not visit me because he missed building pillow forts in my living room. That part cut deeper than I expected. I love those kids. None of this was their fault, but loving them does not mean I must martyr myself to their mother's irresponsibility. I told Mom that if Caroline wanted help, she could ask respectfully, arrange childcare in advance, and pay for services like any other adult. Mom sighed as if adulthood was optional for some people. Dad stayed quiet, which is unusual but revealing. Mason texted later saying he understood why I drew the line, but he also hoped I would not let things get too cold between us. I appreciated that. It reminded me that everyone is tangled in this family web, even those who glide through it with fewer snags. The irony was inescapable. I was accused of being transactional for expecting compensation for labor, yet Caroline's love was transactional for as long as she could get something free out of me. Suddenly, my boundary was the problem, not the pattern of exploitation that created it. It is strange realizing that peace does not always feel peaceful at first. It feels quiet. Too quiet, like a house after loud guests leave. You notice the mess only when the noise stops. Still, I sit with it, because that quiet is finally mine. And every time I hear someone say I set a bad precedent, I think one thing. Funny how nobody cares about her precedent of dumping kids without consent. Mason was the one who delivered the update first. He told me that Caroline finally tried hiring a professional sitter, a woman with glowing reviews and a business Facebook page that used phrases like sensory aware and proactive redirection. 3 hours later, the sitter left with a cracked iPad, crayon murals across the wall that looked like cave art from a sugar-drunk Neanderthal, and a bill in hand for $200 covering hazards pay, cleaning, and property damage. Caroline apparently sat on her couch afterward and cried into a throw blanket while saying that raising kids is harder than people think. Mason recounted this to me in person, and we both laughed at the same moment. Not mocking her as a mother, but laughing with the relief that she was finally feeling even 1% of the pressure she had dumped onto me for years without a second thought. Understanding cost versus effort was something she skipped entirely through most of her adult life, and watching her reach that point now felt like watching someone put together a puzzle you stopped explaining years ago. The unexpected side effect was Logan. Somewhere between trampoline parks, emergency plumbing, and individual pizzas cut into perfect eighths, I became legendary. Logan told his classmates that Uncle Mike has unlimited pizza, a jumping place, and enough video game controllers for every child in North America. River spread stories like tiny folklore claiming I own the moon, and rugs that are made of clouds. I was rebranded by elementary school rumor to Disneyland with plumbing receipts. It was ridiculous and flattering and exhausting at the same time. So when Mom invited everyone over for dinner, I assumed we were walking into a Cold War disguised as pasta night. Instead, it felt like some strange United Nations summit where everyone was trying to look neutral while watching the other side for weakness. Mason talked about work. Caroline complimented Mom's cooking with careful politeness. Dad watched the ceiling fan like it was airing a more interesting program. But halfway through the meal, Caroline wiped her hands on a napkin and said she wanted to address the childcare misunderstanding. The table became a frozen photograph. She asked if I would be willing to help again, but fairly, meaning she thought a reasonable rate was something like $10 for an entire evening. $10, 6 hours, 2 children. I felt something inside me deflate like a tire finding a nail. I said calmly that babysitting 2 high-energy children for a night so she could party hop was worth significantly more. Dad nodded with the quiet dignity of someone who finally saw the math. Mason nodded like he had been waiting for someone else to say it first. Even Mom hesitated, which was new. Caroline let out a breath that seemed to carry 5 years of assumptions. She admitted she expected help because I always helped before. She admitted she depended on me like a built-in safety net she never considered might snap. And she apologized, soft and unwilling, like the words scraped her throat on the way out. But I accepted it. I did not need her to kneel in regret or repay every hour of babysitting I gave her in the past. I only needed recognition that my time mattered. That reliability does not mean endless free labor. That responsibility is not servitude. The strangest twist came the next day. She texted saying she had a date on Friday and asked if I could watch the kids for 2 hours. She said she would bring food money up front. No assumptions, no surprises. She approached me like I was family, not staff. I said yes. Boundaries do not forbid kindness. They protect it. The boys came over with backpacks fully stocked like tiny survivalists. They brought pajamas in case of spills. They brought veggies and pizza cash. They brought crayons limited to paper instead of walls, which felt like personal growth for everyone involved. We watched a movie, built a fort that did not collapse catastrophically, and ate dinner without plumbing emergencies or napkins catching fire. They hugged me goodbye without being dragged or bribed. The house was messy afterward, but not destroyed. The night cost nothing except time, and this time the time did not feel stolen. Then the money arrived. $300 wired to my phone marked partial payment. I stared at it longer than I expected. It was not about the amount. $2,000 remained unpaid, but $300 was acknowledgement. $300 was her saying I see the work. $300 was her naming the burden she once pretended was weightless. Respect is a strange currency. Small amounts feel huge when you have been bankrupt for years. Since then, things have been calmer. Caroline asks instead of assumes. Mom bites back lectures about family duty because she finally understands that duty goes both ways. Mason jokes that I became a legend for sending an invoice, but also a pioneer for teaching boundaries to a family that thought unconditional meant unpaid. Even Logan still asks if he can visit the fun place, but he asks, not appears on my porch like a tiny hostage of circumstance. I did not want revenge. I wanted balance. I wanted to exist in my family without being the utility closet everyone opens when something breaks. And unexpectedly, all this chaos, all this plumbing, all this pizza grease and trampoline sweat paid off in a currency I never thought I would receive. Respect. The funny part is, I lost more hair to stress that weekend than $2,000 will ever replace. But what I gained, autonomy, boundaries, equality, was worth every dollar and every toy car still laughing under the bathroom pipes. I no longer feel like the background character who shows up when needed and fades when finished. I feel like someone with a name, a schedule, and a spine. And if Logan still calls my apartment Disneyland, fine. Disneyland knew its worth too.